Thank you so much for choosing to listen to Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. I'm Kristen Dees, the founder of Catalyst Consulting, a business consulting agency that is passionate about helping small businesses thrive. The goal of this podcast is to connect entrepreneurs with experts in a variety of industries that support small business owners in order to provide you with helpful tips, resources, and some entrepreneurship inspiration. Welcome to this episode of Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. My guest today is Krista Resnick. I'm super excited to have you join. We're going to be talking about some conflict and boundaries and all the good stuff. I'm pretty excited. So tell us a little bit about you as a human being. Where are you from? What do you do for fun? All that good stuff.
Where am I from? Who am I? Those are like small questions.
I know, right? No big deal.
Thank you, by the way, for having me. It's such an honor and a treat. Anytime I get to talk about boundaries, that is like my jam. That's what lights me up. Truly.
Good.
Okay. So where am I from? You asked me that first, right? I'm a little tall.
We're going great out of the gate. It's going well.
We actually were talking about right before we hit record, how it just is like, come on, Friday, come on.
It feels like it should be Friday. Yeah,
it does. And I think it was, having missed Monday. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Oh God, I forgot that too. I worked on Monday, but still, I forgot that technically we missed a day. We did not. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. I know this because my garbage did not come today. The show must go on.
Yeah.
I'm from a small community in the Midwest. I'm about 2 hours east of Minneapolis called Rice Lake, born and raised here. So that's where I reside. Love the Four Seasons. Cannot imagine not getting the opportunity to experience Four Seasons. I love them just because I love them. I also love to follow them in terms of like the cyclical, what they represent in my own life. So, we're rolling into fall, leaves are starting to turn color. Eventually they'll start falling from the trees. And I look at that as, what do I need to also let go of? What do I need to surrender in this season of my life? So I'm a big fan of the Four Seasons. What else did you ask me? Who am I? What do I do for fun?
What do you do for fun, family, all that good stuff?
Well, I have 3 adultish boys, so they're sort of like, cheap entertainment.
Yeah.
The youngest just turned 18, and he in and of itself is just pure entertainment. Like, he is the baby. He is the wild child. He is very much rules. I know nothing of rules. Oh, rules are to break. Excellent. So on his 18th birthday, which was last week, he got a motorcycle and a tattoo all in one day.
I love his style.
Right? I knew you would.
Good for him. Yep. I mean, I got a tattoo on my 18th birthday as well. So I get it.
Yeah. So they truly keep me on my toes. I really love to feed them. There was a while where I couldn't stand it because it felt like something I had to do when they were younger. And now that they're 18, 20, 23, I know it sounds kind of corny probably, but maybe it doesn't. I just really have gotten back into the kitchen and used my creativity to just put food together that is nourishing, that is bringing all the members of the family together to share conversation and to connect. I think if there's anything we learned in the past couple of years, it's how powerful community is. And so I've been having a lot of fun getting back into the kitchen. And I've noticed the more that I do that, the more that I get in there and use that right side of my brain, the more it actually does impact my business. It brings in a sense of fun. It brings in a sense of pleasure. I'm a big fan of cozy. Like, that's my jam. That's fun to me. So, doing a lot of like decorating, just making the house feel warm and inviting and nurturing. It's really good for my nervous system. And it's just part of who I am. Like, cozy is my word. It's my jam. I love being outside. We also have 2 wild and crazy, sweet and salty English bulldogs, both puppies. So that just tells you a little bit about our family. We got 1 puppy in November. That's not hard enough. Like, you're potty training when it's 300 below. And then you decide to get another puppy in February. Like, that just gives you a little bit of a, inside peek into our family.
Because they need a friend, you gotta have a friend. So obviously, and it's already winter, so you might as well just get another one now. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I support it. Yeah.
Marty and Mabel, there are 2 bulldog babies. Yeah. And they're extraordinary. So Yeah, I love to lift weights. I love yoga. I love moving my body. I love to walk in nature. I love to travel. Yeah, I love to coach. I mean, oh man, there is something so potent about coaching, about, watching women really just kick off and shed those old patterns and those old ways of being and those old beliefs that they got so wrapped up in as far as who they thought they needed to be. It brings me life to watch a woman speak and express and walk in her truth. So yeah, that's a little inside peek into my world and what makes me me.
I love it. Very joyous and full of life, I feel like is a good summation.
Yeah.
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 No, it's great. I love it. That's one of my favorite parts is like all the little things. Cause we talk about, especially when we're doing like networking and making connections like that, we naturally just talk about the work stuff. So it's one of the fun things I like about doing this is like, tell us about you as a human being and just finding those little things that you connect with people on. Cause a lot of this stuff I don't necessarily know until we do this either. Cause we met for 15 minutes before we did the episode. So I get to learn fun things about you. I feel like I remember you saying something about cozy though. Maybe there's talk about slippers or blankies or something, but
I've got a huge, old fishing box. It's an antique fishing box, actually, full of blankets. They're just, I never could understand, why did I need to buy so many candles? Why did I need to have so many blankets? Why did I need to have all of these textures and certain things I would, cozy little robes and sweaters. Now I understand, having done the work, it's all very comforting to my nervous system. And it's all really creating that safety within myself. Didn't understand that then, but I do now.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all the things you kind of learn. One of my best friends is super into also like decorating for the holidays and when she feels, what's the word? Unrooted. When she feels like her place, her life is in chaos or whatever, and she can't decorate and stuff, it makes her just feel uncomfortable and unhappy. And it's one of the things. So in her work was she didn't have a super stable home environment as a kid. So it's like one of those things that's like being able to create your own space and build your own traditions and be like, these things, it's like doing the holiday stuff is like traditionally a family thing. You have like Christmas decorations and Thanksgiving and Halloween and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
So what's a fun fact about you? What's something random that not a lot of people know?
I'm actually really introverted, and people are always shocked because I have such a big, bold, vibrant personality. I crave big doses of alone time. I love my own company. And so people are always like, no, you're not. You're actually not. So I'll meet somebody and their next request is, well, we should have coffee. And I'm like, we actually shouldn't. No, we actually shouldn't.
Yeah, please no. Let's not.
No, please no. And that sounds so terrible, but I've learned to just really embrace that part of me. I just love days with no commitments. Usually that's my Friday. I don't take clients on Fridays. And if I want to work in my jammies all day, teeth unbrushed, or whatever, I get to do that. That is my favorite way to spend a day.
Definitely the same way. And I get the same kind of people are like, oh, what, really? And I'm like, yeah, after talking to people, I need fetal position time or just quiet. And I call them my do nothing days. So I have to have at least one whole do nothing day a weekend or the equivalent, 24 hours somewhere in there of like no obligations. I can do nothing. It's great. I have to. That's like, if I don't get that, I start to feel super burnout and overwhelmed really easily. So yeah, I love it.
And the beauty is, that about yourself. So you give yourself what you need so that you can thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taken a lot of work too. Cause sometimes I feel guilty about it because we are also historically trained to measure our value based on how many things we get done. So
yep. Gotta love the good girl female conditioning.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, really that's my jam. That's just culture in and of itself, right? But the female nice girl, good girl conditioning is, how can we tend to other people's needs? How many functions can we go to? How can we make sure that others are pleased with us? Well, you're not happy with me. What can I do to make you happy with me? All of those things, which keeps us spinning, busy, right? Being that hyper vigilant mode, which is exhausting.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A hypervigilant mode. Yeah, it's terrible. I'm like, no, not doing that anymore.
Yep.
So do nothing days. It's
Yeah, I love
amazing.
that.
I love it.
Do nothing.
So what do you do on the work side of things? Like, how do you provide support for business owners and entrepreneurs with what you do?
I love this question. So I take my work. I'm not here to say that traditional boundary work is not helpful, because it is. And I use a lot of traditional boundary work. What I know for myself, though, is as I was trying to navigate through setting boundaries. So I've got this purpose, I've got this passion, I want to create this, that, and the other thing. But when you have no boundaries, that doesn't work real good. You're constantly saying yes to other people's needs and requests and all of those things, and leaving no time to really work on your own business and really take it to the next level of where you'd like to go. And so what I started to notice with myself was that I could have any script. I read the books. I've got training in nonviolent communication, which I love and am so passionate about. However, did the podcast, workshops, read books, all of that, but I didn't really know how to do boundaries. So if somebody was coming at me and they had more of a critical tone, if somebody was coming at me and they needed something from me, I would become so dysregulated, which is that internal conflict, that the next thing you know, self-abandon, jump ship, and be totally acquiescing, subordinating to whatever that person was asking of me. And so it really wasn't until I started to do a deep dive into the nervous system and really understand and go through training and education around becoming trauma informed, really understanding survival patterns, coping strategies, the nervous system, that I was able to really stand in my truth and express myself from my place of power, even though it still felt a little discomforting, right? Because boundary work is discomforting at first,
Yeah,
right?
very. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's very dysregulating to your system. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so once I started to dive below the surface, as I like to call it, and go, okay, I've read the books and that's cool and whatever, and I can have my script, but man, oh man, when that person's coming at me, there's the lump in the throat. There is the internal temperature of the body that literally was like 500 degrees. My face would become flush, my ears would become hot, and I literally wanted to crawl out of my skin. Like I just didn't understand what was happening. I was having a stress response. Now that I've able to be, trained in that and piece all that together, I'm really able to help people go a little bit deeper. Well, not a little bit, a lot deeper into really holding their boundaries, holding and expressing their truth, asking for their needs to be met in a clear, concise, and compassionate way. Because if we're just, letting anything fall out of our mouth that we please, that's not speaking our truth either. That's coming from a very wounded place as well. So that's really how I'm able to really support people at a deeper level in standing in who they are, standing in what their gifts are, standing in their purpose, their passion.
No, I like that. I think and boundary stuff is so hard too, because I feel like one of the hardest things about it is that at some point you have to be willing to walk away if your boundaries are not honored. So like people who come from unhealthy family environments, unhealthy relationships, unhealthy friendships. I kind of did that like accidentally pretty early on. Like 10 or 15 years ago, it was like to me, it became more about the reciprocal nature of the relationship and not necessarily if I do this for you, you do this for me, but there was a give and take on both sides, whatever that looked like. And so, because I was like, why am I like hanging out with these people that just like take things? They're just like takers. They take energy or they never have money. So you need to pay for them when we go do stuff, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, this isn't how I want to live my life. So I just sort of accidentally figured that one out. And then later on was like, oh, it's boundaries. Okay. But the other stuff is a little bit more complex because you're talking about like work boundaries and like the power dynamic stuff is challenging. That's been one of my hardest things sometimes is the power dynamic, depending on the nature of the relationship usually anyway. But yeah, it's hard. And then being willing to be like, this no longer serves me. If you won't respect my boundaries, I'm going to go do this now, or I'm going to go over here. We're not going to do this. It's not healthy. That's terrifying because for a lot of people, that's completely changing their life. in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it's completely changing their life. Absolutely. Especially when you're talking about an intimate partnership in a lot of ways, or your work, right? And for a lot of people, there again, here we go back to the deeper level. It can really bring up that familiar feeling for a lot of folks of abandonment. So if you've got a lot of the trauma from childhood around abandonment, setting boundaries, knowing that they might leave you, they might avoid you, that's going to bring up a lot of your childhood wounding. And that can be really tough to look at. It can feel really, really risky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was some of my stuff too, which also are some of the things I didn't realize until later because, therapy, right? Yep. It's like someone once told me, they're like, the parent that you think you have issues with is often not the parent that you really have the issues with. And I was like, holy shit, what? Like, this changes things. But yeah, so there's like certain, like those kinds of things showed up. And so it was really hard. And then like the people pleaser and kind of like the stuff that we talked about, like when I became a leader at a very young age, I became a people leader at 19. And it was basically like, you seem bossy. Do you want to like be in charge of people? And I was like, sure, more power, more money. Absolutely. Sold. But not really any guidance or direction on like what leadership looks like. So a lot of stuff I've learned the hard way, but that's hard. Because that's a different kind of, you want people to like you, you want people to respect you. And so the natural instinct is to just be nice to everybody, but that's not actually what makes a good leader. And that also doesn't, like, people don't respect you if you're just like the nice leader, the nice supervisor or whatever. So
yeah. And I actually have a client that deals with that a lot. She wants to be seen as the nice girl. She wants her employees to like her, which goes all the way back to childhood. Right.
Yeah.
Having that met in childhood. And so she has been tolerating, until our work together, employees poking their nose in every 5 minutes, needing her permission for this, needing her permission for that. She feels guilty if she's not at the office 24/7, things of that nature. And so we've really had to look at, where did this pattern of people pleasing, nice girl, good girl, placating, chameleonism, we could name it a million different things. Let's take a look at that and stop putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, and really start to look at this wound and clean this out so that we can come from this place of self leadership first, because you cannot lead anybody else until you're leading yourself. So that's really, when you ask about what is the work that I really do to support business owners, entrepreneurs, sometimes it looks like CEOs, things of that nature. It's really about self leadership first and foremost. Truly, that's the heart and the crux of just cleaning out all of the unhealed wounds, unhealed traumas, unhealed, unmet needs, and untrue thoughts that all of us are carrying around so that we can self-lead.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's very important work. And I'm glad that it's become a lot more discussed. I guess it's a lot more a part of the conversation now, like just the boundaries and like all that kind of stuff, and defining some of the things where it's like, I saw something the other day, I think it was on TikTok. I get like 97% of my therapy from TikTok. They were talking about how people place blame on the victim or whatever. So people who tend to attract narcissistic type behaviors and like abusive people and all that, they're like, well, what are you doing to attract them? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, let's not forget that they are still the predator and I am still the victim, or we, whoever, royal we. And like, there's things that we can do to protect ourselves from those situations, but it's like, it's still not our fault. Like I was like, oh, that was an interesting perspective. Cause I feel like that's in a lot of work that I've done, it's like, well, how can you take responsibility for the choices that you made? And how can you become accountable for those things and not repeat the same patterns? That was a really hard concept for me to get into and through, was accepting my own instead of just making everyone else the bad guy.
Yep. That was my pattern too. And what we really want to remember is it is not your fault. It is not your fault. It's your faulty conditioning. I mean, everything ultimately, I would say 99.9% goes back to childhood and the unmet needs that we all, the unhealed wounds, all of that we carry from childhood. And so it's not your fault. It's your faulty conditioning. And again, it's not that we're pointing blame at caregivers, parents, grandparents, whoever raised us, but it's just being able to separate, oh, this actually wasn't my fault. They were dealing with their own garbage, carrying around whatever they were dealing with. It's my faulty conditioning. And it's my responsibility to heal and get help now so that I don't continue to carry out the pattern any longer.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to phrase it, I think, because it's a very complex process for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of grief. There's a lot of anger that comes up towards mom and dad, that we get the childhood that we deserve. And so I work with entrepreneurs and leaders on all of that, because when you're holding on to all that resentment, when you're holding on to all that anger, it is going to leak out. And so we release a lot of that emotion because it's taking up an unbelievable amount of energetic bandwidth in your system. And so once we start really cleaning some of that out and start filling up, as I like to say, our own love tank, our own self-worth tank, we can really make some room for some pretty amazing stuff in our life.
Hey, thanks for listening so far. I hope you've been enjoying this episode of Building Better Businesses. I just wanted to stop and share about our Business Foundations course that is now live on the Catalyst Consulting website. This course goes over Business Planning 101, so it goes over a template for business planning as well as setting up your foundational habits and practices as a business owner. So we'll talk through some time management strategy, defining your version of success, and then also wrap up your business plan for you. If you want to check it out, hop over to bit.ly/pillar1. That's bit.ly/pillar-1. That link will be available for you in the show notes as well. What's your background? How did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Well, social work was how I got started. Yeah, that was my original roots. Then I stayed at home with those wild kiddos for a while. And then when they went to school, I wanted to do something. And at the time, simultaneously, I was, this always sounds so funny, but it's my truth. So I have to tell it. I was a scrapbooking mama.
Nice.
So as I was scrapbooking, I just had this desire, because I'm super creative. I had a desire to start taking better quality pictures. So I started taking photography classes and putting my stuff online, putting it on Facebook. I finally, long story short, I get the Facebook message. Hey, can you photograph my wedding? Can you photograph my family pictures? I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know. Can I actually charge? I mean,
yes.
I had such low self-worth and self-value that I was like, I don't know that I can actually do this. I don't know that I'll be any good at this. Then there became that energy exchange, monetary versus what I could produce. And things just kind of got weird for me. And I decided to jump and do it anyway. I've always had this, there's part of me that wants to just kowtow and go into the fetal position, and I'm going to jump. I'm going to do it. And I listened to the jump. So I started doing that, started photographing high school senior girls pretty exclusively after about a year or so, and started to build relationship with some of these girls, and started realizing as I was several years into this process that they were coming to me for wisdom and advice and encouragement and just a safe place to land. I created little leadership teams with these girls that were seniors in high school. It was just a really cool experience. So long story short, I'm leading and coaching these girls without really recognizing that I'm coaching them. And I started to just honestly feel that knock at the door of my heart going, okay, this has been fun. You've been doing this for, I think it was 5 years. It's time to let it go. It's time to let it go. There's something else for you. Long story short, one little action step led to another, found myself in coaching school, ended up going to another coaching school. Both were, one was actually quite horrific. The first one, would not recommend that one. Second one was extraordinary. And what I would notice with my clients is that we would make progress. And then 3 months, 5 months, 3 weeks, the pattern would surface again. There's the old patterns that we were talking about. So the school that I went to is the best mindset coaching school you could go to, but we cannot operate from the mind alone. We can't be walking around these big heads, right? We've got a body. We've got something that, neck down is there to give us feedback. And so I started to go, there's something more. I'm missing something. I can't seem to help these clients get sustainable results. The pattern keeps surfacing. I started noticing it in myself. That's when I went back to school for the deeper training in trauma, somatics, internal family systems, things of that nature, so that I could really start to stop. That probably is a little contradictory. I could stop putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And I could really help these clients look at that bullet hole and go, okay, I know I'm scared, but we're going to start looking at it. We're going to start cleaning it out. We're going to start healing it and stop putting the Band-Aid on it. Because that's kind of what I felt like I was doing beforehand, was just Band-Aid on a bullet hole, and off we'd go. 3 weeks later, there's the pattern again. I'm not enough. Oh, I feel guilty. I took a day off. Things of that nature. So that was a long explanation.
No,
but
that's great. Yeah. Great. It's funny too, because like I feel like the people that have done some of the work, when they're describing the journey, it's like what you just did, where you're like, here's what I was doing, and it was like, it was good, but it wasn't enough. And here's like, I learned a lot, and then I moved to the next, and this is what happened here, and this is what I learned, and this is why I moved to the next thing. It's like the complete story, which I think is always interesting to me, just, the different, where different people are at in and what they do. Those of you who do like the coaching and energy work and work very deeply in that space tend to, it's like, here's what happened, and here's why, and here's what I learned. And I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I love this story. It's the best part.
Well, sometimes it feels like, if you've ever looked at the back of a quilt, the back of a quilt can sort of look like a mess, but then you flip it over and it's beautiful. It all makes sense. And that's sort of how I equate a lot of our stories. At the time, as we're plunging forward, it's like, this doesn't make sense, but I'm feeling this call to do this. I'm feeling this nudge to take this action. I don't know why. But when we lean into self-trust, when we look back, we go, okay, now it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am a firm believer in that, like, intuition and trusting your gut and following those little nudges. That's good. I think it's what makes things interesting. I think you can just keep doing the same stuff, or you can be like, wait a minute, something weird is coming up. Let's do this instead.
Exactly. Leaning into the wisdom of the body is your truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you set your boundaries from. That's where you speak your truth from, is really leaning into the wisdom of the body. Because your head will tell you any story around guilt, shame, why you should, why you shouldn't, why this, why that. But when you really get quiet and listen to the wisdom of the body, if that's available for you, some people that have had really extreme trauma have trouble getting into the body, right? So we have to be careful with that. We have to be mindful of that. But if that's available to you, wisdom of the body is everything.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. I had another thought. It'll come back. They always come back. What are 3 things you think entrepreneurs should know about what you do, or like 3 pieces of advice or recommendations that you could make, something like that, as it relates to what you do to help people?
3 tips, 3 pieces of advice regarding boundaries specifically, or just anything?
I think boundaries specifically. Yeah.
One thing that's really coming up for me as you ask that question, I don't want to say I want to be careful how I frame this. It makes sense in my head. So let's go with this. We'll see if we can piece this
teamwork.
Together.
Yeah.
Yes. Teamwork. You can help me fill in the gaps. For me personally, nothing has pushed my edges out more than being an entrepreneur. It's like, there's your visibility, right? Like, I can't be visible. I need to play small. Again, that came from my childhood. Who am I to say this? It was as if I built my own cage, right? Each bar representing cage of comparison, cage of self-doubt, cage of victimhood. I was a huge victim. I mean, that was just normal to me. I was raised in a home where there were no I'm sorries, meaning when you don't ever say you're sorry for anything, you're never taking responsibility for anything. Mm-hmm. That just wasn't a thing in my household. I've never heard the words I'm sorry leave one of my family members' lips. So there was no ownership for anything because it was never our fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. So
you shouldn't have, if you hadn't, I wouldn't have, or everyone's out to get me. It's their fault. It's not because I didn't do the responsible thing and renew my tags on my car or whatever. Yeah.
My business isn't growing because XYZ. Blah. I mean, I had every story. So literally it was as if I built the bars cage by cage with all of my baloney, with all of my stories, with all of my, the cage of comparison. I compared myself terrible to what some of the other coaches were doing. So here's where we get to have a conversation about internal boundaries. And yes, that's a thing. And yes, they matter just as much as the external boundaries that we set. right? External boundaries being the boundaries we set with other people, with our clients, with, whomever we serve, our employees, whatever. Internal boundaries are boundaries we set with self. And so it's, what are some of the boundaries that I need to think about or consider with maybe my inner critic? I was coaching a woman earlier today, and that was one of the boundaries we worked on, creating that boundary with her inner critic, so that it's not so loud and pervasive and telling her stories like, you're a failure, you should have, all of the things, right? So what are some of the internal boundaries? Here we can even take the conversation. What are some of the things that set you up for success? What are some of the internal boundaries as an entrepreneur? Because as you know, entrepreneurship is no joke. What are some of the things you need to be doing to set yourself up to succeed? Are you rolling out of bed, like with your feet hitting the floor and just having the world coming at you before you're even taking 5, 10, 20, whatever it is for you, minutes to connect with yourself, to come from that place of, being regulated, being grounded, being anchored, right? Are you eating nourishing foods? I know when I eat garbage, I feel like garbage. And it's really hard for me to hold space for somebody going through stuff. And my clients go through stuff. It's really hard for me to hold when I'm putting garbage in and abandoning myself because I'm eating like crap.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise. What's going on there? What kind of internal boundary do you need to set with yourself there? What's your self-care look like? So internal boundaries are something that I'm really, really passionate about. And especially for an entrepreneur, we can set all sorts of different kinds of internal boundaries. So I think that would be the first place that I would really encourage entrepreneurs to start looking at, is what kind of internal boundaries can you be setting with yourself to set yourself up to thrive and succeed?
No, that's great. Hey, thanks for listening so far. I just wanted to stop and share one of my go-to CRM resources, which stands for Client Relationship Manager or Customer. Less Annoying CRM, I think their name was intentionally chosen, it has been my favorite that I've been using for a while. There's lots of other great CRMs out there. I have some other ones that I refer to, but it's the one that I'm using and I like the most just because it allows for different customization options and a little bit more flexibility. It's a little bit more manual and doesn't have automated pipelines necessarily, but that's one of the things I actually like about it. So depending on what you're looking for in your CRM, Less Annoying CRM is a great one to try. If you use my link to sign up for Less Annoying CRM, you get an entire month for free on top of their already free 1-month trial. So you get 2 months for free if you use my link. I think that's plenty of time to test something out and see if it's going to work for you. They have great tutorials and guides to get you through setting up your account as well. And their customer support has always been helpful when I've needed to ask questions. The link for that is bit.ly/catalyst LACRM. And that link will also be in the show notes. When you were talking about the fitness or being healthy or something like that, I had heard at some point in time, it's probably on TikTok, about how we make and break promises to ourselves all the time. And that's one of the biggest things, is the health, fitness, anything like that. When you're trying to make a big life change, that's a really big, healthy step forward into something, you also have to change and let go a lot of the stuff that got you there. Right. But I just thought that was a super interesting perspective of making promises to yourself and breaking them. We break promises to ourselves it's our job all the time. We say we're going to do things, we don't show up for ourselves. And that framing of it was interesting. I was I would never do that to my friends or family, but I'm going to do this to myself over and over and over. So now I'm super careful about if I'm going to set an intention or if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to try to go to the gym again. I won't say I'm going to do it until until there's the thing that clicks inside of me that's yes, you're going to do this and you're going to stick with it. Because it's so easy. We're just yeah, I'm going to eat better. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to save money. I'm going to whatever the thing is that we're trying to quit smoking, stop drinking caffeine, etc. So I just won't do it until I'm
yeah.
It's crazy.
Here's the thing that's really coming up for me as you're saying that. At some point, we've got to get serious, Kristen, about our relationship with ourselves. It's always about the external. And yes, we're created for community. We all want to belong. We all want to be a part of something. I'm a huge advocate of that. And we also have to look at our relationship with ourselves and where we're out of integrity with ourselves. One of my favorite stories to tell is not all that long ago. We were at a social gathering and there was an acquaintance there that I knew. And he came up to me and he wanted to share what he thought was a funny joke. And I said, cool, sure. Share the joke with me. So he proceeds to share the joke with me, which I found deeply offensive. Now, I know in today's world, everything is deeply offensive. However, this was a joke that was very much directed at the oppression of a certain population. So I found it deeply offensive. And at that moment, it was like I could see a fork in the road. And it was as if I kind of stepped back for a moment and it was like, okay, what are you going to do here? Are you going to go left? And are you going to self-abandon? Are you going to go into your old pattern, people pleasing, placating, go along to get along? And are you going to laugh at the joke? Because you don't want him to say that, I was kind
You're
of
so uptight or blah, blah, blah.
what's
Yeah.
wrong
You don't
with
have
you?
a sense of humor. Yeah.
The other path, the other side of the road being honoring my truth, expressing what was real and alive for me in that moment. Now, here's the interesting part. Nobody needed to know, right? Like I could have laughed and gone along to get along and not a big deal. Nobody would have needed to know. The other way, it was not like there was any big, huge consequences, right?
Yeah.
But I knew, that's the point. I knew that if I didn't speak my truth and I went along to get along, that I would not be in integrity with me. And I would wake up the next morning and I would feel that knowing that I self-abandon to appease somebody else. And I didn't honor my truth. And I just think at some point, how we do anything is how we do everything. And so it's those little small moments where we acquiesce that really are setting us up for the bigger moments. So I think it matters. I think we really have to get serious about the relationship that we are building with ourselves and setting those internal boundaries to be in integrity with ourselves.
Yeah, it brings up a good point too, because I just kind of had this experience at an event. I went to a concert with some friends, and I've done a lot of intentional stuff around that too, where if somebody says something inappropriate or not funny or overtly racist or offensive or something like that, then I'll say something. In most cases, we were at this concert and there were these two people standing right next to me. It was outdoor, to be fair. We're outdoors, huge concert, Dixie Chicks or Chicks, sorry. So it was like 27,000 people, right? But they're standing right behind me and they talked the entire time, the whole concert. And I was just like, I was having this like internal conflict crisis, whatever, of like, how do I handle this situation? Because I'm like, I feel like, so one of my things is I am a recovering, super considerate and overly polite person. So I'm like, people who don't put their grocery carts back just send me through the roof. I'm like, I shouldn't have to tell you that this is annoying to all the people that are around you. And so I was struggling with how to address it. And I ended up just going over and moving over to the other side of my friends. And then we were talking about it afterward. I was like, was I supposed to say something? I was like, it bothers me because it was affecting my experience. I mean, I get that we weren't like in a play or a church or something where it would have been like, shh. Like that's the easy solution. And then I was talking to my other best friend, because I'm lucky enough to have two. And she's like, she's like, the thing that I've learned is handling this situation in a way that is aligned with your values as a person. Yes. So if I had turned around and been like, do you mind? Like, I'm trying to listen to a concert, you're being super rude. I would have felt gross and guilty about it later. But if I had turned around and been like, hey, excuse me, I'm super sorry, but like, do you guys mind maybe stepping away or something? It's really distracting. I'm just trying to listen to the music. And I was like, oh, that actually makes a ton of sense. I'm like, because that's one of the things I struggle with when I'm like, I feel like I should be able to stand up for myself. I feel like I've done the work. I feel like I should be able to say, excuse me, I'm displeased. But it was just because I had let it like bubble up. And then I wanted to turn around and be like, do you freaking mind? I was like, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to do. So it was like this little conflict thing, but it's a very similar, when she explained it in that way, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, so still handling it in a way that I would handle it if I wasn't raging mad.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yep. And that's totally what happens with conflict it's literally most of the time, like the tea kettle analogy, where it's simmering, and then all of a sudden, kaboom, and it just explodes all over. And the interesting thing about conflict is the more we avoid it, oftentimes the more we create and attract it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that's been something that I've always struggled with too, is conflict. And like I was mentioning earlier, in those where the power dynamic is different. If I'm in charge of the situation, I have no problem. I can handle it smoothly, calmly, appropriately in almost every situation, unless they really just push my buttons. I've had some people that have worked for me, they just get you. But when the power dynamic is different. I don't feel like I'm in the, the power balance is tipping the other direction. In those situations in the past, I've had a much more difficult time being able to be like, I don't really love what's happening because I'm worried that they're going to not, it's usually somebody that I'm worried about impressing, or I want their respect, or I want them to think I'm cool or whatever, like whatever the thing is. And so I've had to do a lot of work with that too, where I'm like balancing. I don't care as much about what other people think in that way now, because I was always obsessed with being the perfect person for everyone thinking I'm amazing, and just like constantly trying to manage my own public relations team in my head was very busy all the time. And so like letting go of some of that stuff and being like, it's okay if not everyone likes you. This has been such a huge, like the last like 10 years of my life has been actually probably 8 years. My 30s has been a learning process. But yeah, being able to let go of some of those things, like I don't have to have the approval of everyone. It's fine if they don't like me. Am I still going to try? Sometimes, probably, but that's made that piece easier. The power dynamic thing, and being able to more effectively be like, yeah, I don't really love your attitude right now, or I'm uncomfortable in this situation, or that joke was not funny, to your point. Cause that's, I had somebody do that to me just the other day, like said an overtly racist joke and laughed and looked at me like I was going to think it was funny. And I was like, are you serious? Like, can you explain what you meant? Because they said, and I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, because, and I was like, that's not funny at all. That's so offensive and rude. And I can't believe that came out of your mouth. And they were just like, oh God. I was like, do you say that stuff to people? I was like, I can't. Anyway.
Sounds like that was an appropriate boundary for that situation. There's times where our boundaries can be a little more assertive like that. And I think to your point, well, now I kind of lost track. There was a boundary tip.
Yeah, sorry.
Something you said that I was like, oh, this would be boundary tip number 2, being an entrepreneur. Can you stand in your truth, knowing in your boundary, truth, whatever we want to call it? We can use those interchangeably. Can you stand in that, knowing everyone will not like you? Everyone will not like your boundary. They will not like your truth. I have a client right now who hates her own truth, let alone somebody else liking her truth. She hates her truth because what it means for her is that she's got to make some really hard decisions.
Oh yeah.
And stuff's about to change and get real. She's looking at it going, this is my truth, because every time I talk about this with you, Krista, it brings such relief to my body. That's how we usually know that something is true for us. We feel relief. And so if she takes forward moving action on this, there's going to be a lot of people who probably don't like it, but it's her truth. So she can stand in, okay, I can continue to do this and acquiesce and subordinate, or I can speak my truth and have a few people really upset with me, but also being in integrity with me and being in alignment with my values. And so as an entrepreneur, especially, not everybody is going to like our boundaries. They're just not. They're not going to always like our truth. Can you still remain true to yourself, knowing that somebody doesn't like it? I didn't say comfortable. Can you be comfortable with it? Can you stay true to yourself, even in the discomfort of knowing that Sally down the street is really honked off at you right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. Because it is so uncomfy. Like you were saying, like the more you do it, the easier it gets. But when you're setting one, and it's especially a big one, it's never great. It's like, and you're just like, everything inside of you is just screaming like, this is so uncomfortable. And it's just like, oh my God. And just like holding firm. You're like, it's like you're standing in the ocean and the waves are just like, it's like, no, I can stand. I got this. I got my little ski poles, whatever I need. Good. Yeah.
And I think that's really important to talk about. I don't think there's enough people talking about it. I don't know that the self-development industry has always helped us in this area, that it is uncomfortable. It is challenging. These are patterns. I mean, this is why I went really truly back to get more training in trauma, because I just knew like not everybody can just take this constant forward moving action and just stand there with their hands on their hip and be like, this is my truth. And I'm just right. Like not everybody. There's a lot of us folks who have had a lot of stuff in our suitcase that we're hauling around, a lot of unmet needs, a lot of unhealed wounds that we literally feel like we're going to die if we set a boundary. Because people pleasing was how we stayed safe. People pleasing was how we stayed in control. People pleasing was how we got approval from people. It's how we found our worth. So you don't just stand there with your hands on your hips with the snap of a finger and start setting boundaries automatically when that's been your history. It's not that easy. So I think we have to have a conversation around that and say there is going to be some resistance. You are going to want to acquiesce at times, and it's okay. Can you ride that wave of self-compassion even when you screw up, even when you acquiesce on your boundaries, even when you laugh at a joke that deep down you knew you shouldn't have? Can you still have compassion for yourself and those parts of you that have fought so hard for you to be liked and for you to be feeling like you're approved and that you matter?
Yeah. And I think sometimes when that does happen, because it does, especially when you're new to practicing that kind of stuff, or you're testing out a new one. I feel like sometimes when you don't hold fast and you get that feeling of like disappointment in yourself, like, man, I really would, then you know it's real. Like, so I feel like that almost helps sometimes to be like, nope, I was right. Like this is right. It felt so gross, and I felt so unaligned with myself and my values if by not honoring that it gives me like the little validation sometimes that, does that make sense? Like, cause you're just testing, it's all an experiment, essentially. Like living is just an experiment.
Right?
We're all just
You need to tweet
little
that.
petri
Living
dishes.
is an experiment.
Yeah. I actually talk about that a lot with failure. I don't like the concept of failure. Learn from your mistakes, fail forward. You have to fail. I prefer to think of it like the scientific method, because that is what it is you're testing a hypothesis, you're asking the question, testing a hypothesis, observing the results, coming up with the analysis and being like, okay, that wasn't great, but let me move these things around and try again. And then you just keep going. Like that's the whole, otherwise the failure concept is just, I think, so crappy too for entrepreneurs. It's like you're just over and over again banging your head against the wall, and that's not actually what it is. You're doing things on purpose and trying things, and sometimes they don't work, and that's fine. I mean, it doesn't feel great, but you know what I mean? So
2 acronyms I love to play with that would be probably quite helpful for your listeners and for any entrepreneur that wants to lean into them. The first is, it's either an acronym or acrostic. I get them confused. The first is the word fail. And I actually just coached somebody around this morning. So it's always ironic how this comes up again later, usually.
Yeah.
First attempt in learning.
Oh,
just your first attempt in learning. Like as an entrepreneur, I am literally trying things all the time. Some work beautifully, and sometimes I don't even know why they work. And some work horribly. Like the first time I did a launch, guess how many people signed up for my program? One little person. Second time I launched, 0.
Oh God. Yeah. I've done that so many times. It's exhausting. Yep.
Doesn't mean I failed. I tried something. It didn't work out. Let's take the information. So here's the second acronym or acrostic or whatever it is. IRA, intentional action. So I took action with intention for both those launches. I looked at the results. Okay. So intentional action, tweak your results, and then take different action. I'm sorry, intentional action, look at your results. So you take your action, then you collect the data, you collect the feedback from whatever the action was. Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't show up so great. Maybe, we should have put more money into the Facebook ads, whatever the information is, right? Whatever the feedback is. And then we tweak and adjust and take different action. We just keep going.
Yeah. That's basically, like just try something else after that. I think the mistake that some people might, and I do this to myself sometimes too, is like, I try something once and I'm like, it didn't work, instead of continuing to try or like adjust the strategy. Like I do that a lot with launches and stuff, because I have my own things around feeling guilty about selling. I can do it one-on-one, but like I'm trying to like focus really my energy on that right now with like the online space and building an online community. For whatever reason, it just kills me. So I'll be like, I'm doing a thing. You guys should totally join.
Yeah.
And then like, that's it,
Sort of that smallifying, like you said, rather than, hey, did you all hear? Like, run, get in this program. It's going to be that.
And like multiple times, like it's anyway, so I'm working on that right now, but
it's a work in progress.
We're just a little petri dish.
That's right, we're all just petri dishes. I love that. It makes it so, like, when you can bring levity into this work, this work doesn't always have to be so deep and heavy. It can actually be fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably also some crying sometimes, but
for sure. There's tons of crying.
You feel better. Yeah. You feel better after.
But I think when you can bring levity into it, like, hey, we're all just a bunch of petri dishes trying to figure things out,
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening so far. Just wanted to stop and tell you about Monday.com, which is one of my favorite task and project management systems to use. If you've been looking for a way to better coordinate your tasks and project management with your team members or with clients and customers, Monday.com is a great way to do that. You can set up individual boards for each client. You can share and collaborate across multiple boards with your team members, upload files and contracts and information that you want to keep handy, all kinds of stuff. So it's a great way to manage a lot of moving pieces and a lot of tasks across multiple different resources. The link for that is mondaycom.grsm.io/catalyst. And of course, the link will be in the show notes too if you want to check it out later. So what was I going to ask? So when somebody is looking to work with someone like you, probably specifically in your niche with like the boundaries and like trauma work and all of that kind of stuff, what are some things that they should know or ask to make sure that they're getting somebody who can actually help them? Because to your point that you made earlier, it's a very saturated industry. And I think there are a lot of people running around with no idea what they're doing. And that's a pretty dangerous space to play in. So what are some things they could do to kind of protect themselves? A couple questions they could ask.
Oh man. Wow. That's a really great question. I've actually never really thought about that question. So I'm just kind of marinating in that for a moment because I just had a colleague write a post about this the other day. She's like, I don't really speak about this a lot, but I'm activated. I saw a $7 coaching certification program. Like, my education has been like probably at least 5 figures. Like,
yeah,
high, like high.
Like a little, like when you look back at it, kind of makes you want to throw up a little bit.
Kind of makes me want to throw up a little bit, and yet not, right? You've really got to be trained to hold people in their darkest moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would ask if I was interviewing somebody right now for coaching, I would ask, what is some of the personal work that they have done? I would want to know that.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take your clients through what you have not gone through yourself.
Yeah, I think that should be applied to even if there's a lot of business coaches running around thinking they can like tell people because they can Google stuff. I'm like, you don't know though, like for real. Yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah. So for example, most of the women I work with struggle with anger and resentment. Lots of them actually know it. They're cognizant of it. Some of them don't. Anger can be a pretty big, intense emotion. There's a reason why we stuff it down, right? So I have had to do my own anger work, my own emotional releases so that I'm comfortable holding my clients in theirs. If I had not done my own anger work, if I had not done my own emotional release work, there's no way I would be comfortable holding someone in that space, helping them activate their anger and release it in a session. I couldn't do it. It would be really uncomfortable for me. But having gone through the process myself and gone deep into that, I'm able to hold that. Like nothing really makes me uncomfortable. I've heard it all. I've held it all because I've done my own deep work, therapy, coaches, all of it. So I think that question really matters. What is some of the work that you are currently doing? What have you done? I think that would matter. Mm-hmm. Great. I would also want to know in today's world, not that you want to lay stake to this because there can be a little bit of a hoity-toity thing about this as well, but I would want to know their level of certifications. I would want to know that they just didn't wake up one morning and decide that coaching sounded cool, right? And I would maybe want to even explore the school that they went to a little bit. I would also, and I don't know how to frame this question up, but I would also want to, first of all, you've got to meet with them over Zoom or in person or whatever.
Yeah.
Zoom is how I do it, of course, because you can feel the energy. You can feel like a couple of the master coaches that I personally have worked with. My husband and I were just talking about this the other day. There is no such thing as perfect. It doesn't exist. We need to actually erase the dirty curse word from our vocabulary. It's not a thing. And as long as we continue to use the word, it's like we're still saying that there's a level of perfection to sort of, try to achieve. Let's just stop using the word. There is no such thing. So these master coaches that I've worked with aren't perfect, but you can feel their integrity come through.
Mhm.
There's an energy. You can feel it. They walk their walk and talk their talk. And I don't know exactly, I'm struggling to formulate what that question would be if you were a potential client. Like, how do you actually ask somebody, are you in integrity? But I would want to know a little bit about what results they've achieved, what they've accomplished as a result of the deeper work. I would want to know how they're showing up a little bit. I would want to know that they are walking their walk and talking their talk and not just reading something in a Brene Brown book, thinking it sounded cool and going to try it out.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, that makes sense.
I don't know. And
It's
that to me might not be so much a question as just the energetic flow that you would feel. Like you can tell when somebody's in integrity with themselves.
Yeah, I mean, like doing for this kind of stuff, for like coaching or consulting, there should be a consultation. And I don't think that they should be charged for when you're like getting to know somebody, because that's like a debate thing too. Like people like don't do consultations for free. I'm like, how's somebody supposed to get to know you? I think that's a bunch of crap. If you're doing something like if you're providing a service in that time, so like I charge for strategy sessions, but I don't charge for my consultation because that's when I'm getting to know the person. I'm asking them their questions. They're getting to know me. It's what helps me come up with the plan for the person and the business. I'm like, I would never charge for that. That's absurd to me. So anyway, I've gotten into debates on that lately.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I mean,
yeah, it's like
I have to know that I have the tools and skills to help this person and help. I mean, this person I might not be the right coach for this person. I might have to refer them out to a trauma specialist.
Yeah, that's the same, because there's certain times like I help people create structure and like build action plans and get out of their own way, like help them create a roadmap for whatever the thing is they're trying to accomplish. So there's an element of disarray, confusion, entrepreneurship, chaos, right? Like that's very common in entrepreneurship. But then there's an element of people not really knowing what they want to do at all. And I cannot help those people that are like, I kind of want to own a flower shop, but then I also want to be a financial planner. And I've always wanted to be a travel agent. And I'm like,
yeah, no, not the client.
You need a therapist though. Yeah. Or a Krista maybe, but probably therapist. Yeah. So like those kinds of people, I'm like, I can't. But the consultation is exactly like you said, how I figure that piece out. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, hey, maybe not right now, but like down the road, here's some people.
I've had that too, where it's like, I don't think I'm the coach for this person because of X. I don't know. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's basically it's like trust your gut. So when you're meeting with this person who you're going to give money to, and you meet with them, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it, which is a boundary. Trust your guts, trust your instincts, and the little intuition things that are like this person, because like you said, you especially women, like we know when someone's full of crap and when they're just like trying to blow smoke and they're not coming to you from a genuine and authentic place, then don't do it. Like trust your instincts. I feel like that's kind of the piece of the message.
If they're pushing you, because I have worked with those coaches that sell your couch, do whatever it takes to work with me.
Yep. Get a credit card, go into debt. It's an investment. If you're not willing to invest in yourself, then you're not even do not work with that person.
Yep.
Period.
Exactly.
I have never felt as violated or gross as I have with an experience like that. And I'm like, this is like, they're like, I said, I just really can't, that's too much. One, I didn't realize it was a sales call. I thought this person was a coach and they were like, we were just meeting and connecting. And then she brought her like up level coach on the call, who was like hard selling me and shaming me about all of the things that I was. And she's like, well, if you're not willing to invest in yourself, then you're never going to succeed. And I was like, first of all, lady who does not know me, I can want to invest in myself and factually not have the dollars in my bank account. And I'm not going to give you $0.
Right.
And I'm not going to like put myself in debt to do. Oh, I was so mad. So yeah, don't do that.
I'm really sorry that was your experience, because at the root of all of this, I think every single human, I apologize about this time of day. It looks so angelic, don't I?
Yeah, I have the same problem. I was watching your son move and I was like, mine's about to do the same. So
I keep moving around trying to get out. Yeah. Anyway, so many of us at the root, really what we all struggle with is shame. I mean, that's the crux of all of it, is this deep shame. And we use all of these patterns: perfectionism, people pleasing, having to get it right, success, even having a lot of money. We use all of those things to cover up that shame. Not that some of those things can't be good, right? Like, I want to run a lucrative business, but to have somebody that's in the healing industry, and here's where the trauma informed has shifted everything for me. For someone in the healing industry to be dumping more shame on another human being is simply not acceptable. It is not okay.
Yeah. It's toxic. It's taking advantage of people in their weakest and most desperate times. Like, I can't tell you how many people have come to me from situations like that too, where they're like, yes, I've been paying this person like a flabbity jillion dollars that I do not have, and not getting results.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, I just don't, it's not good. Like, I was just talking to somebody today that I was like, I'm not going to stalk you. I'm not going to bug you. Like, we've met, we've talked about this. It seems like it's a good fit. You seem like you're on board. You let me know when you're ready. Like, I'm not going to, I will never hard sell someone. Yeah. Anyway,
you want to really empower them to make a decision that feels good for them. Yes, maybe a little. There's been times I've slid the credit card over to coaches and kind of went, oh.
Yeah.
But I knew, liked, and trusted that coach. And I knew that I was going to get the results. I had a relationship with them, and I just knew. So I was okay leaning into the risk, knowing all would be good. Now, did I hand the credit card over and look at my husband that night and go, well, we can't feed our kids for a couple weeks? That's just foolishness. Yeah.
I just can't. It's so awful. And if you guys need help, just let us know. We'll send a strongly worded letter on your behalf, and it'll be signed Krista and Kristen. No, thank you. Good day. We'll do a template. That's what we should do. It's just templates for like, nope.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. Perfect. Okay, so how can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you, stalk you on the internet?
Yeah, you can just go to my website, www.kristaresnick.com. That's the easiest to remember. I'm on all the social places, Facebook, Instagram, all of that, but just come to the website. I also have a podcast called Becoming Boundaried, so they can, check it out on iTunes, Spotify, wherever they like to listen to their podcasts. Those are you'll find me. www.kristaresnick.com is just the easiest. It's simple to remember. If they're listening, driving their car, they can just remember that and head on over and get in touch with me.
Perfect. Yeah. And we'll have all the links and stuff in the show notes too. So if people want to check it out when they're not driving, because this is very common, that is a common podcasting activity. Then they can scope it out. So yeah, perfect. Thank you for hanging out with me today. It was a great conversation. I love talking about boundaries and trauma and healing. So
you too.
That's good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. This was such a gift to me as well. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks so much for listening today. This was a great episode, and I'm sure you will appreciate the tips and insights from today. If you want to connect further with our guests, you can find the contact information, social media links, etc., any of the freebies in the show notes from today's episode. Please show some love to our guests and like, follow, and subscribe their content if you connected with them. And also don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. Also, if you drop a juicy review, that's always cool too.